Welcome to the Archive Room podcast.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Fastamai, I'm Judith Lay, and I'm very pleased to find you waiting for me at the door to the Archive Room, the place where we keep stories of island life in years gone by, told by the people who were there. So come on in, sit down and make yourself comfortable, and let's listen to this week's selection. For the last programme in this present series, we're wishing a happy 90th birthday to the film No Limit. Made in 1935, it starred Britain's top comedian at that time, George Formby, as aspiring TT rider George Shuttleworth, and charts the hilarious ups and downs of this Wigan chimney sweep's journey to the Isle of Man to find racing success and romance. The love interest was played by established star Florence Desmond, and No Limit was the first of 11 films George Formby made for Associated Talking Pictures, ATP. The film was a massive success, but maybe we shouldn't be too surprised at that. As George Formby himself said,
"Well, have you ever felt that if you got the chance you could do a thing really well? Well, that's the way I felt about pictures."
And it turns out he was absolutely right.
So come along and see me riding in the TT race.
Of course, the Isle of Man is the only place you could possibly make a film about the TT races. But director Monty Banks was always going to need quite a bit of local help, as Jack Cannell, father of the legendary TT commentator the late Jeff Cannell, explains to David Collister.
Well, actually, at the time, I was taxi driving and I was approached by one of the persons from ATP to see would I give them a little bit of directional help because they were making a film of racing, and I had already done one Manx Grand Prix, and they had the two brothers Raoul who had also raced the Manx Grand Prix, and we were originally supposed to be just directing them as to where people would be allowed to be and where they would not be allowed to be. And I just packed up, well, I put a fellow on the taxi actually, and earned myself quite a bit of money for a change.
What sort of money did they pay you then?
Well, the offer originally was 3 guineas a day plus a packed lunch from Fort Anne daily.
Now, how would that compare with your normal pay then?
Well, you were very lucky if you were earning £2.5 a week. That's what I was getting, I think, on the taxi, £2.5 for a 7-day week. But it was 3 guineas a day, whether there was any shooting done or not.
So you found yourself not as an advisor in the end, but actually in the film then? I
did, actually. They brought one of their supposed to be daredevil men over here. I think his name was Bert Geddish, if I remember correctly. And the first day of shooting, he was incapacitated. I think it was either a broken arm or a broken leg. He shot off a couple of planks at the back of Blake Bridge and dropped into the river. That was him and my bike out of the way.
Your bike?
My bike, yes, because they didn't fetch a bicycle for Bert to ride at all. They just spotted my old BSA.
So then, from then on, you and the Raoul boys and one or two others were riding for the stunt scenes, really, weren't you?
Well, we got a mix-up. We did part and parcel of it each, yes, all the way along the line, whichever one they seemed to pick on. The rest of us were just filling up riders on the road for all sorts of fancy work.
Now, the crew that would be there, and was there a lot of people doing these shots, or just a handful of people there? Were the stars there as well?
Well, the only two stars that were there were Florence Desmond and George Formby himself, who seemed to be poles apart as far as I was concerned. But the crew wasn't very big, if my memory serves me right. There were about a dozen of them altogether.
Did people come out from around the island when they knew they were shooting, come out and spectate at all this?
In certain places there were. The one I remember in particular down on Sulby Street, down by the Glenkeller whiskey place now, where a child was supposed to have crawled across the course and the rider went into a dirty old greasy pond there. I think the whole of Sulby village turned out for that. Of course, for the grandstand scene, they brought every camper that would come up from Cunningham's camp, and I think they gave them £5 each and a free trip to the pictures.
Yes. Did you have any hairy moments then in the shooting at all?
Not really hairy. I think the most hairy moment I was supposed to come out from the back of a little island there in front of the Glen Helen Hotel and hit a fellow coming up the road. And in those days when clutch levers and brake levers came out of the handlebars, I got my handlebar lever stuck up the back of one of the other riders' belts, and that was very hairy indeed.
Yes. What did you make of George Formby himself then?
Well, to be quite candid, as a rather youngish, 19 at the time. I wouldn't say he was a bit of a nutter, but he was exactly the same. He never stopped. He was either singing, banging the old ukulele, or
what, even off stage, on set, off set, just the same, was he?
Anywhere at all. Anywhere he stopped, he'd give you a song and he'd have a chatter. But for some reason, they didn't seem to want to be together, the two so-called stars. Because in those days, the changing room for Flotty Desmond was the back seat of an Austin taxi.
Mm. What happened to your bike then? Was it virtually a write-off after you threw it over the top?
Well, the bicycle was a write-off, actually. I mean, it was a colossal loss to me. I think I'd paid Teddy Christian about 15 quid for it, and its back was broken, so I just asked the accountant there, I said, what about the bicycle? And he said, well, how much? I said, 40 quid will cover it, and sold it to them.
Jack Cannell reflecting on the part that he played in the making of the film No Limit. Jack Ward was a schoolboy in 1935, but well remembers how some of the special effects were done.
So there was a chap called Bert Kerrish on a BSA. He rode up the steps at the side door, but the steps were actually painted on a ramp. The door was made of balsa wood and was 30 inches across. Now the handlebars of the Beezer were only 29 inches. So this was quite a good stunt as he rode through the door at a fair lick,
They had this sort of dust all over the place, didn't they, as he hit the door?
Yeah, that's correct. Those bags of Fuller's Earth were put over the door. You see, the Fuller's Earth came down as soon as you went through the balsa wood, you see, and dust everywhere.
You would be schoolboys at the time. How many, half a dozen of you or something? There
was actually 10 of us there. Now, some of the chappies' parents took part. Bert Killia's grandfather, he was roped in to the bar to drink and slosh ale everywhere.
He'd enjoy that.
Yeah. His name was Joe Tasker, actually. So there was actually 10 of us, and Monty asked us if we'd cheer and wave arms about,
Did you know any of the stunt riders?
This Kerrish chap, he also done the act of falling off in front of the pub main door. Now, he'd done this 3 times, and Monty Banks wanted him to do it once more, but he refused.
He'd had enough, had he?
Yes, there were some hot words exchanged, but I can't mention them here now. And there was also Harold Rowell and the Plant Brothers.
What sort of things did Harold do?
Harold went down the plank a couple of times, but there was a chap called Scotty Cummins, said he'd ever go, and he did, but he came off from the plank and he broke some ribs. So that was his little stint. We were kids and it was great fun.
Jack Ward, who, as a schoolboy, remembers the fun of being involved in the making of No Limit. Someone else who remembers the fun of being an extra was Cissy O'Brien. When Monty Banks wanted a group of children for a particular scene, the children's home in Douglas, where young Cissy was living at the time, was the place he went.
There were half a dozen of us picked, and we had to go down and sit on the wall at the bottom of the children's home. And when the fella waved his flag, we had to get off the wall and walk across to the grandstand. They'd put a bit of a grandstand up,
Mm-hmm.
And in the film, it looked as though George Formby was going at the speed, but he wasn't. He'd come from Governor's Bridge, just a normal speed, and it looked as though he was going like 60 miles an hour,
yeah.
And he could have run into us.
Right. You'd be enjoying that then?
Oh, we did. We had great fun.
Did you get any money for it?
I think it was 2 shillings, and it felt that big in my hand, that 2 shillings. I thought, it was like winning the lottery.
Did you get to meet George Formby then?
Yes, oh God, yes.
Yeah?
He was marvellous to us. We weren't allowed to go and sit on the bike or anything like that.
No. What about Florence Desmond?
Oh God, he hated her. She was shifting us away. Go away from me, go away, you orphans. Get these orphans away from me. And I went up to, being very cheeky. I said, I'm not an orphan, my daddy's still alive. And I was going to kick her, but I didn't.
She didn't get on with George Formby, did she?
Oh, they were bitter enemies. And I don't know how you couldn't get on with George Formby. Very easy-going man.
She didn't think he was very bright, you know.
He was all right, you couldn't kid him.
Cissy O'Brien, with a very definite view of Formby's co-star Florence Desmond, who played love interest Florrie Dibney. By 1935, Miss Desmond was already well established as a popular actress with some 20 years' experience of stage and cabaret work behind her and over a dozen films to her credit. And sadly, her memories of working on No Limit were not entirely happy ones, as she once explained to David Collister in this telephone interview.
I didn't get on very well with Mr. Formby. He was very inexperienced, as a matter of fact. He'd only done one cheap little film somewhere, but not even in a proper studio, called Boot. And it was shown in the north of England and went extremely well. So the distributors thought it would be a good idea to put him in a proper film. They thought it would be a good idea to have George Formby, who had a big following in the north of England, and for me, who had a following in the south, and put us together. It was a good idea, I guess, and the film made a lot of money. It wasn't a true co-starring part, to my way of thinking, equal on both sides.
Yes.
But it was purely a film for George Formby.
He went on to become enormously popular, as you know. I mean, did you recognise that sort of star quality in him when you appeared in No Limit?
Yes, I knew that he would be a success with an audience, but what was incredible that he made a success in the film, because Monty Banks directed it and used to tell him about everything. When you fade out on a shot, he would just stand quite still. Monty would say, "No, come, George, look, you know, to sort of do a double take, look and go, oh, do something."
Yeah.
As the camera fades out.
He had to be guided at every step of the way. So you found him difficult to work with as an actor then? I mean, did you find him difficult as a person off the set?
Yes, I did.
And was his wife there at the time?
Yes.
She's always been described by people in show business as a bit of an ogre.
She was. You know, she would watch us doing a scene, and out of the corner of my eye I could see her giving awful looks.
Was she jealous of you?
Jealous of anybody who happened to have an embrace with him. Not that that was any joy, but the fact that one did, she couldn't stand it. There, early in the morning when he was being made up, until he left the studio in the evening.
Right.
She never left him.
What about the finished film? I mean, you must have seen it through. Have you seen it recently at all?
They showed it on television a few weeks ago.
Yes. What did you think of it?
And I thought it was very good.
The voice of Florence Desmond, George Formby's co-star in No Limit. The local cinemas lent their support to the film too, as cinema manager Bob Wilkinson explains again to David Collister. Cinemas helped to advertise for people to be extras. They screened the rushes, the raw, unedited footage that was very popular with the locals, and, as Bob also explains, made a bit of film history too.
I was manager of the Royalty Cinema. That was 1935. And Monty Banks, who was a producer, asked us, all the cinemas in that period of time, would we put slides on the screen asking the public to go up to make the extras for the races, which we did do. There's quite a number of incidences in the film. For instance, the one in the Villa Marina, the shopping arcade, which took a long time in doing, but was never shown. They were at that nearly all day long, but it was never shown. And many of the rushes which came from England after they'd filmed over here, we used to show at the Royalty during the morning or when they weren't shooting. And it was a time when the cinemas were always packed to suffocation. And when you look back and think of the film like George Formby, which has such local interest, the locals were as happy to go up to the grandstand as were the visitors.
Yes. They got a few bob, didn't they, for being extras, I think?
I can't remember exactly what they did get. But I know I got a nice gold pencil from Monty Banks for putting the slides on the screen and helping them with the rushes.
What sort of fellow was Monty Banks? Was he a tough character?
No, I don't think so. He may have been with his artists, but as far as we were concerned, he was quite a nice person. I can't remember exactly the date when it was first shown on the island, but I do know from 1945 onwards, it's been shown twice every year. Well, first of all, Race Week in June and then in September. And when you come to think of it, that it was shown on every cinema on the island in its time. And there used to be 11 cinemas here on the island. And each week it was shown for 7 days, twice nightly. So you're talking roughly about 1.5 million people have seen this film, which is fantastic.
Yes.
It's more than any other super production that's ever been made.
This would be a nice little income for the Palace Company, as it was too, wouldn't it?
It was, and we as cinema managers in those days used to really fight who was going to show No Limit, because it was such a winner.
People always said, you know, that the copy of No Limit that we apparently showed seemed to be cut every year, and it got shorter and shorter and shorter. Was that true?
Well, the only way it would get shorter and shorter is that it was in reels, and each time the film was made up, the operators had to snip a piece at the end. So over the number of years, and naturally it would appear to get shorter, but it was only small frames that were taken out of the film. And in those days, the first film was an old, what we call a nitro film, which was flammable, which of course they do not allow in operating boxes now. But in those days, the film was entirely different and was one which we used to take great care of. But as time goes on, it certainly makes its mark as far as the film is concerned.
How important would you say that film was in the whole publicity of the TT races? Do you think it really actually made any difference to publicising the TT?
Oh, yes. The fans that used to come over for the TT races, if George Formby wasn't on, or they thought it wasn't on, they'd play hell over it. Because it was a must, as far as they were concerned. They would come over to TT races to go and see the races, naturally, but also to see George Formby in No Limit.
This was
it
part
was a
of
must.
Part of the holiday.
They see it year after year.
Did you always find that it brought gales of laughter?
Oh, everybody thoroughly enjoyed it. It was always a pleasure to show it.
Even to the latter days, the recent days?
Even to then. I mean, to say, we know the techniques of the camera have changed, but it was still great entertainment.
What did you make of Formby himself? I mean, they say that it was his wife that ran his career and made all his decisions for him.
Well, I think perhaps that is right, because Beryl was definitely the boss. She told him what he had to do.
My ribs begin to shake about, there's all my spare parts sticking out, so come along and see me riding in the TT race.
Bob Wilkinson, manager of the Royalty Cinema in 1935, recalling the part that cinemas played in the success of No Limit. And there's going to be a major exhibition in the Manx Museum here in Douglas to mark the film's 90th anniversary, opening on the 24th of May and running throughout the summer. Partnering with the George Formby Society, Manx National Heritage will showcase original Formby memorabilia, racing artefacts from the era and behind-the-scenes photos revealing how the film was made. Now, after a quick commercial break, brace yourself for the final episode in our vintage serial, The Little Dark Cupboard, recorded 50 years ago and featuring actors drawn from the island's drama groups of that time.
By Jingo, it's bingo time at Celtic Trader with the following bingo specials. Andrex toilet rolls just 45 pence. Heinz tomato soup 23.5 pence. 1 litre of Mazola oil just 79 pence. 6 Oxo cubes 19 pence. And chef corned beef, the 12-ounce size, now only 85 pence. All these and more can be won instantly in store at Celtic Trader of St Paul Square, Ramsey in the Onken Shopping Centre.
So low in price we are, so near, so far.
Those were the days. And now, before the final episode of our serial, The Little Dark Cupboard, a quick recap. Lost in the fog whilst hiking on Dartmoor, husband and wife Bill and Eva have taken refuge in a house where the door is unlocked and the place unoccupied. A brief visit from a neighbour confirms that the house owners, Captain and Mrs. Reethy, are probably out shopping, and the door being unlocked is quite in character with their trusting nature. Having delivered a bombshell that a convict escaped from Dartmoor prison is roaming the area, the neighbour leaves, and within minutes a man appears at Eva's side. At first she assumes he's Captain Reethy, but is then overjoyed to recognise him as Smitty, the genial gardener at her aunt's house, who rescued terrified little Eva when, as a young child, she accidentally locked herself in a little dark understairs cupboard. Bill is less happy to see this man wearing ill-fitting but very smart clothes, quite clearly raided from Captain Reethy's wardrobe, and Bill quickly realises that as well as being Eva's childhood saviour, he's also the escaped convict on the run from Dartmoor jail. Smitty, real name Smithers, is at pains to explain it's all a dreadful mistake. He went to London, he fell on hard times, he got into bad company and ended up being wrongly jailed for allegedly attacking an old lady during a bungled robbery. Something he'd never do. Bill is all for calling the police, but Eva is distraught at this unjust treatment of the dear man who was so kind to her as a child and knows he couldn't hurt anyone. So she not only persuades Bill that they should let him get away, she even gives him some money. As we rejoin them now, we find that Bill and Eva hold rather different views on Smitty's future.
I'm just wondering where Smitty's got to.
Slap into the waiting arms of PC-49, I expect. Come on. Hey, there's someone coming. A man and a woman. I can hear their voices.
Gosh, it'll be the Reethys. Can we
No, they're almost here. Get back. And for God's sake, try not to look so self-conscious.
But Bill...
Shh, they're on ears.
Oh, you two still here, eh?
We were just leaving and then we heard voices.
Oh, we thought it might be the Reethys, didn't we, Bill?
I haven't clapped eyes on either of them. It suddenly come to me. They said they was going to Tavistock one day this week. It'd be me and Constable Tucker you heard. He's just gone to have a look round the outbuildings. The old place is swarming with them, warders too.
Oh?
Convict chap still at large, seemingly. You heard no seen nothing, I suppose?
Oh, no. No, nothing at all.
Just as well for you. The killer type, they say he is. I'll be thankful when they got him. You've been pretty quick, eh, Tucker? What's up?
The dog, out there.
Dog? You a policeman and scared of a dog? Go on with you. Old keeper'll not hurt you.
You're right. He won't. He's lying out in the yard. Dead.
Dead?
As dead as about a dozen jabs with a knife can make him, I reckon.
Keeper? But...
You mean someone's deliberately killed the dog?
It's hardly got the look of an accident. It's taught us one thing, anyway. Smithers has passed this way. This is the search area. And the sooner they get him, the better. He's in a dangerous mood.
Smithers?
Used to be a gardener at one time. Then went to London and took to crime like a duck to water. Suspected of killing a bank messenger, but not enough evidence. Nabbed a bit later for nearly battering an old woman to death.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Sit down, Eva. Sit down. My wife's a little highly strung, Constable. Hearing about the dogs upset her. For God's sake, sit down and get hold of yourself.
They the two you were telling me of, Mrs. Luscombe?
Aye.
How long have you been in this house?
About an hour.
Nothing suspicious occurred?
Nothing.
No, he wouldn't hang about. Found the very thing he wanted. An empty house. Food, drink, change of clothes. The dog barked and had to be settled first. But after that, Bob's your uncle. I'll just take a look upstairs and then report.
I hope they get him soon and give him hell. When I think of poor old Keeper, it's taken all the use out of me. Miss Reethy'll nearly go mad when they tell her. Fair worship that dog she did, and no wonder. quiet as a lamb he was and do everything but talk. And now he's lying out there.
It isn't true, Bill. Oh, it couldn't be.
Don't
It
say
couldn't
anything
be.
now. Keep quiet.
A man who do that to a dog. Constable's coming back. He can't have looked proper. Jim Tucker, what is it? What is it?
You are wrong. They didn't go to Tavistock. They're up there.
Let me pass,
Listen,
please.
if you go up those stairs, you'll see a sight that'll never leave you till your dying day.
But
Stay where you are.
Captain and her...
You can't help them now. Nobody can.
The play was entitled The Little Dark Cupboard, and the cast, in order of appearance: Eva was played by Brenda Farger of St Mary's Players, Bill by Wiley MacDowell of the Service Players, Mrs Luscombe by Kathleen Squires of the Russian Amateur Dramatic Society. The Man was played by Jack Hampson of the Service Players, and Police Constable Tucker by Michael Lees of the Legion Players. The producer was Mrs. Olga Gray of the Legion Players.
Well, I'm lost for a word. Did you recognise any of the voices? I recognised the lovely, bright voice of Brenda Farger, but I was beaten by the others, and it was Peter Neal who gave us the cast details. And that's where we must leave the archive room for a while. But if you've missed any programmes or would like to recommend them to a friend, you'll find podcasts of every episode right from the very first time we open the door to the archive room, all available at manxradio.com or via your usual podcast provider. And as we close the door on this series, my thanks to our wonderful archivist, Tim Price, for his help in preparing this material. And my thanks to you for listening. I'm Judith Lay, and I wish you a very good evening.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.